What would you do if the moment you had longed for your entire life, the moment you imagined would be filled with pride, gratitude, and belonging turned into the moment you were quietly erased? If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where in the world you're listening from. She sat by the kitchen. No name card. No seat at a table. No gentle invitation into the warmth of the celebration. Just a folding chair tucked away between a stack of used trays and a rusty cart with a broken wheel. From that forgotten corner, behind a pair of swinging doors, Isabella watched her son get married. She had paid for the flowers that adorned the altar. She had paid for the chairs lined up in perfect symmetry. She had paid for the band that played their first dance. And yet, when the music swelled and the toasts began, she was nowhere near the laughter or the love. Isabella stood there for a long moment, her soft mauve chiffon dress clinging to her arms, the heat of the kitchen ovens rising against her back. The same dress she had chosen carefully, imagining herself part of the joyful photographs. The same hair she had sat 3 hours to have styled, dreaming that today would feel like a celebration for her too. But no one had told her. No one had said, "We've made other arrangements." No one had even looked at her. Not Liam. Not the bride. Not anyone. Liam, her son, smiled widely across the room, letting his bride's mother kiss his cheek with the easy affection of a woman who hadn't stayed up with him through childhood fevers, who hadn't scraped together double shifts to pay for his braces when there was barely enough left for rent. Isabella clutched the beige leather handbag he'd given her on Mother's Day so many years ago, when he still called her Mama. Her fingers trembled slightly, the small, unseen shiver of a woman standing on the edge of something she didn't yet dare to name. A young catering manager approached, cheeks flushed with awkwardness. "Ma'am," he mumbled, "the bride asked if you could wait back here, for the, aesthetic." The aesthetic. The word struck harder than any slap could have. Isabella said nothing. She simply nodded. Because what else was there to do? The kitchen doors banged open again, and laughter flooded in from the reception hall. Someone pushed a chipped plate toward her cold chicken, rubbery and forgotten, and Isabella sat down slowly, her chair creaking beneath her. There, in the heat and grease of the kitchen, amid the clatter of dishes and the squeak of the broken cart, she swallowed the bitterness rising in her chest. Because it was his day. Because she had told herself she wouldn't ruin it. Because she hoped that love could still be enough to hold her place. Isabella pulled the cream-colored wedding program from her purse. Elegant cursive across expensive paper. Her name wasn't printed anywhere. Her father-in-law had walked the bride down the aisle. Her mother-in-law had given the first speech. And Isabella, the woman who had built Liam's world with her own tired hands, was not even a whisper in the story they told that day. The door swung open again, and through a sliver of light, Isabella caught a glimpse of Liam twirling his bride beneath the chandeliers. He didn't look her way. Not even once. She pressed a napkin to her mouth, pretending to wipe away a non-existent stain, pretending the heat in her eyes was from the onions in the kitchen. But it wasn't. It was grief. Silent, sharp, uninvited. And somewhere deep within her, somewhere no one else could see, something small and fragile cracked. Not enough to break her completely, but enough to change her. Forever. Isabella didn't touch the chicken breast left before her. It had gone cold, congealed under the kitchen's heavy air, but she couldn't have forced a bite past the knot tightening in her throat even if she tried. Around her, the reception surged onward, a symphony of laughter and clinking glasses, muffled only slightly by the swinging kitchen doors. Every burst of music, every cheer from the crowd, twisted the knife deeper. She sat there, hands folded neatly in her lap, a portrait of composure. Outside, they toasted to love. Inside, she swallowed humiliation like bitter medicine. Still, she said nothing. Still, she stayed. Not because she didn't feel the slight, but because she had told herself again and again that today was bigger than her pain. She pulled out her phone, if only to anchor her shaking hands, and absently opened her banking app. It wasn't meant to be anything more than a distraction, a tether to normalcy. But there, nestled between the familiar wedding charges, were 2 transactions she didn't recognize. 486.52. Champagne tasting event. 732.8. Spa day, bar crawl. Her breath caught. Not the venue, not the flowers, not even the towering cake she had smiled and agreed to upgrade. No, these were indulgences, luxuries, little celebrations she had never been invited to join. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled further, her finger tracing each careless charge like a scar being carved into her chest. And then she found it. A Venmo note, thoughtlessly public, sent from the bride to a bridesmaid. His mom is covering everything, might as well go big. Wedding vibes. The words blurred before her eyes, not from tears, but from something colder, something deeper. Not hurt. Not even betrayal. Something harder. Something final. Isabella leaned back in the battered folding chair, the cool metal pressing into her spine. The sting of being excluded from the party had been cruel, but this, the theft of her generosity, the casual entitlement, this was a wound carved with a scalpel of indifference. And yet, she didn't scream. She didn't march into the hall to confront them. Instead, she moved with quiet precision. The kind of precision that only comes from a lifetime of being overlooked and choosing every timino to shatter the peace. She opened her email, drafted 3 messages. Each one, short, professional, undeniable. The florist, please cancel tomorrow's brunch delivery. Payment balance withheld as per agreement. Thank you. The band, due to changes in event scheduling, the second performance is no longer required. Please consider the matter closed. The bar vendor, scaling back post, reception services. Cancel second shift. No further charges authorized. No explanations, no apologies. Just the quiet drawing of a line too long ignored. When she pressed send, she didn't feel anger. She didn't feel petty. She didn't even feel victorious. She felt something infinitely rarer. She felt free. Isabella looked down at her hands, no longer trembling, no longer unsure. They rested quietly in her lap, the same hands that had once bandaged scraped knees, packed school lunches, and written out every check for this day. She rose from the chair with a grace that no wedding photographer would ever capture and walked to the far side of the kitchen. Beyond the doors, laughter erupted again, wild, unthinking, undeserved. Let them celebrate. Isabella had already taken back what they thought they owned. Not the money, not the flowers, not even the party, but the power. Her silence had ended. And with one quiet series of clicks, Isabella had declared, without raising her voice, enough. The hotel room was still and silent, save for the low hum of the air conditioner whispering against the heavy curtains. Isabella sat perched on the edge of the stiff bed, the glow of her tablet screen fading into sleep mode beside her. She hadn't slept. Not because of anger, not even because of grief, but because a part of her, deep and unspoken, knew that tonight was the closing of a chapter that had been slowly ending for years. She packed her things with slow, deliberate movements, the soft chiffon dress folded carefully away, the shoes slipped into a plastic bag, their soles still sticky from the kitchen floor. And then she returned home, to the small, sunlit house where the scent of lavender still clung faintly to the hallways and the garden roses bloomed wild and bright. There, buried at the bottom of an old dresser drawer, she found the red folder. It was as if it had been waiting for her all along, patient, inevitable. Isabella opened it with trembling hands. The envelope was thin, its edges yellowed with time. Inside, a letter, penned in the familiar, slanted handwriting of her late husband. Isabella, it began. I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but there's something I need you to know before I leave this world behind. Her breath caught. Her eyes scanned the words as the weight of them settled slowly, devastatingly, over her heart. Liam was not her biological son. He was the child of another woman, a fleeting mistake wrapped in shame and silence, handed to her without truth, without choice. For a moment, the room spun. The walls of her life, the ones built around the certainty of motherhood, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, trembled at their foundation. But Isabella did not cry. Instead, she sat back, closed her eyes, and let the memories comment out the betrayal, not the lies, but the real things. The only things that ever truly mattered. Liam's tiny hands splashing in the bathtub, soap bubbles catching in his hair as he laughed with pure, unguarded joy. The way he clung to her on the first night he left for college, his suitcase barely zipped, his voice breaking when he whispered, "Don't go yet, Mom." The birthday cakes she had crafted with trembling hands after long shifts, frosting crooked but made with every ounce of love she had. None of it had been fake. None of it had been a mistake. She had mothered him not because of blood, but because of heart. Because real motherhood isn't forged in biology. It's built, brick by brick, in the quiet acts of devotion, in the silent promises whispered into sleeping ears, in the sacrifices no one ever sees. And Isabella realized, with stunning clarity, that her love had never been wrong. Her love had never been wasted. But now, after the kitchen chair, the missing name from the speeches, the stolen money, the silence when she needed him most, now she understood something even harder. Love was never supposed to be slavery. Love could be given freely, even if it was not returned. But dignity? That was something she would never again sacrifice. Isabella stood, the letter still trembling in her hand, but her heart steady for the first time in years. She would not hate Liam. She would not burn the memories they had built together. She would carry them, as one carries a beloved book whose final pages have torn Lucenot out of anger. But because sometimes, even the truest stories come to a natural, painful end, she chose, in that quiet, sunlit morning, to let him go. Not with bitterness, not with rage, but with a tender, sorrowful acceptance that some good things do not last and that loving someone fiercely does not always mean keeping them forever. Isabella folded the letter back into the envelope, tucked it gently into the red folder, and placed it on the kitchen table where the morning light could touch it. She brewed herself a cup of coffee, sat down at the window, watched the breeze dance through the roses she had planted long ago, and whispered a soft, unseen goodbye to the boy who had once been her world. No more pleading. No more waiting. No more carrying the weight of a love unrecognized. She had loved Liam without regret, and now, at last, she loved herself enough to let him go. The house was quieter than it had ever been, but Isabella didn't find the silence unsettling anymore. She found it honest. It was in that silence that she began her slow, deliberate act of reclaiming herself. The first step was the walls. She took down every photograph that had once framed Liam's milestones, birthday parties, graduations, Christmas morning sand, wrapped them tenderly in old towels. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because she understood now, some memories belonged in the past, not on the walls where they could wound her daily. Each picture, each smiling, frozen moment was a chapter she had lived with all her heart. And now, with reverence, she placed them into a single labeled box. Memories, not obligations. A box that would stay tucked away, safe, but no longer ruling the rooms of her life. The house felt lighter almost immediately, like someone had opened a window in a suffocating room. And in that newfound space, Isabella began to plant the seeds of something she hadn't realized she craved so deeply. A life built not on duty, but on choice. She started small. Sunday mornings at the bookstore, where Denethé, soft-spoken woman behind the counter, always asked how her week had been and meant it. Tuesday lunches with Mr. Henderson, her elderly neighbor who had once quietly shoveled her driveway during a snowstorm without ever mentioning it. Late evening phone calls with Claire, her old nursing friend who still called her Bella and remembered how she took her coffee. These weren't grand, orchestrated reconnections. They were simple, organic moments of genuine affection, relationships where Isabella wasn't a background character or a wallet or a favor to be tolerated. She was seen. She was wanted. She was home. It was Claire who suggested the idea over coffee one afternoon. "You should have a little dinner," she said brightly. "Nothing fancy, just us." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Isabella didn't flinch at the idea of hosting. This time, it wouldn't be a performance. It would be a celebration of survival, of selfhood, of choosing the people who chose her back. She spent the week preparing. not with anxiety, not with the frantic, tight-throated dread she had once felt planning an event where she was expected to disappear behind the curtain. This time, it was joyful. At the market, she picked out fresh basil, bright lemons, sweet cherry tomatoes. She wandered through the aisles at her own pace, not worrying about anyone else's preferences but her own. A blue tablecloth caught her eye sunflowers woven into soft cotton, and she smiled as she tossed it into her cart. It reminded her of who she had once been, who she was finding her way back to. On the evening of the dinner, Isabella moved through her kitchen barefoot, music humming from the radio. Van Morrison, Norah Jones, voices that spoke of soft second chances. The scent of garlic and lemon filled the air. The old kitchen, once heavy with the bitter smell of forgotten dreams, now bloomed with warmth and possibility. When the doorbell rang, she answered it without hesitation. Claire was first, carrying a bottle of wine and a grin so wide it crinkled the corners of her eyes. Soon the others arrived too. Dana with a plate of homemade cookies, Mr. Henderson with a bouquet of daisies clutched shyly in his weathered hands. They filled her little home with laughter, with easy chatter, with the kind of presence that asked for nothing but offered everything. Isabella set the table carefully. Mismatched plates, cloth napkins folded with care, a single candle flickering gently in the center. There were no crystal chandeliers, no gold-edged place cards, no photographers waiting to capture curated perfection. There was just real life. Messy, unfiltered, beautiful. As she ladled lemon butter pasta onto their plates and passed around bowls of roasted vegetables, Isabella felt something deep inside her click into place. Not as an afterthought, not as a footnote, but as the main character of her own story. And when they raised their glasses in a spontaneous toast to Isabella for reminding us that it's never too late to choose joy, she raised hers too, steady, proud. Because in that moment, under the string lights she had hung herself, with garlic and laughter filling the air, Isabella knew she wasn't just surviving, she was living. At last, and at her own table. The knock came just after noon, soft but insistent. Through the frosted glass of the front door, Isabella could make out the familiar silhouette. Liam! She stood still for a moment, letting the weight of it settle over her. Once, the mere sight of her son at her door would have sent her heart soaring. Now, she felt only a quiet steadiness, like the calm surface of a deep river. When she opened the door, Liam stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans, the crispness of the wedding day long gone. His face was drawn, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He looked, for the first time in years, like a boy who had lost his way. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice tight with hope, fear, and uncertainty. Isabella didn't say it back. She simply stepped aside, letting him in without invitation, without welcome. He moved hesitantly, noting the changes immediately, empty spaces on the walls, the absence of framed memories where his childhood once proudly lived. He turned, confused. "Where are the pictures?" Isabella didn't answer. She motioned for him to sit, her gesture firm but not unkind. He obeyed, sinking into the armchair across from Hearth, the same chair where he had once curled up as a child with a picture book in hand. For a moment, neither spoke. The clock ticked softly in the background, marking the heavy silence between them. Finally, Liam ran a hand through his hair and exhaled sharply. "I didn't come here to fight," he said, trying to find steady footing on shifting ground. I don't understand what happened. One minute everything was fine, and then you..." He broke off, gesturing helplessly. Isabella stood slowly, her movements deliberate. She crossed the room, picked up a small box she had prepared, and set it gently on the coffee table between them. "What's this?" Liam asked, wary. "Receipts," Isabella said calmly. "Records of everything I gave, everything I covered, every part of a day where I was expected to stay invisible." Liam's face paled as he sifted through the stack, his hands trembling slightly. "And this," Isabella continued, pulling out a folded letter, the letter from the man who had once promised her forever and left her with a child that wasn't hers by blood, but had always been hers by love. She let Liam read it. His face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then shame. "You knew," he whispered hoarsely. "I know now," Isabella said, her voice clear, unwavering. He opened his mouth to speak, to defend, to plead, but she held up a hand, gentle but final. "I'm not angry because you're not my biological son," she said softly. "I'm heartbroken because when it mattered most, you chose to forget who raised you." Liam's eyes filled with tears, but Isabella didn't move to comfort him. She had spent a lifetime reaching out. Now she stood firm. "You were my whole world, Liam," she said, her voice catching just slightly, not from weakness, but from profound truth. "But now," she added, a small, bittersweet smile touching her lips, "I am my whole world." There was no cruelty in her words, only liberation. Liam bowed his head, the weight of her forgiveness heavier than any anger could have been. When he finally looked up, he seemed smaller somehow, as if the scaffolding of pride and entitlement had collapsed around him. Isabella stood, walked to the door, opened it wide. No shouting, no bitter goodbyes. Just a quiet, irrevocable closing of a chapter that had already ended in her heart long ago. Liam lingered for a moment, as if hoping for a last-minute reprieve. But Isabella only offered him a soft, noted gesture of farewell, not invitation. He stepped outside, the box clutched awkwardly in his arms. And as Isabella gently closed the door behind him, she felt a profound, unshakable peace settle in her bones. Not regret, not resentment, only freedom. She leaned her forehead briefly against the door, breathing in the silence, and for the first time she realized she was no longer anyone's shadow. She was no longer waiting for permission to matter. She was simply Isabella, whole, enough. And the world beyond the closed door? It could wait. The evening unfolded under a canopy of soft lights, strung lovingly across the backyard porch. The long table, draped in a simple sunflower-patterned cloth, bore dishes Isabella had prepared with her own hands: lemon butter pasta, roasted vegetables, fresh bread warm from the oven. Around her sat faces that glowed with laughter and genuine affection. Claire, Mr. Henderson, Dina from the bookstore people who had never asked her to earn her place, who had never measured her worth by blood or obligation. As the last of the dishes were cleared and the wine glasses refilled, Claire stood and raised her glass with a mischievous smile. "I think it's time for a toast," she declared. Everyone turned to Isabella, expectant and warm. She rose slowly, her linen blouse soft against her skin, no longer the armor she used to wear to hide herself. She cradled the glass in her hand, the candlelight flickering across her fingers, steady and sure. Isabella smiled, a real smile, not forced or held back, but born from a place of quiet triumph. "To all of us," she began, her voice clear and strong, "for remembering that our worth was never tied to someone else's vision of us, for building tables where everyone is seen, everyone is welcome." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the table, taking in the small, beautiful family she had chosen not by duty, not by blood, but by heart. "And for me," she added, her voice soft but unwavering, "for finally taking my place not in the kitchen, not in the background, but right here, at the center of my own life." The glasses clinked together in a soft, joyful chorus. Someone cheered, and Isabella laughed, a full, unburdened laugh that lit up her entire face. In that moment, the past didn't vanish, but it no longer held her captive. She had honored it, grieved it, and now she was free to step forward. The truth she had learned, the one that would stay with her for the rest of her life, was simple but powerful. True love doesn't demand shared blood. Sacrifice only holds meaning when it is placed in worthy hands. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is the courage to walk away and save yourself. Isabella sat back down, the candlelight dancing between the plates and glasses, and realized she felt something she hadn't in years whole. The wounds were still there, faint and tender beneath the surface, but they no longer defined her. They were just a part of her story, not the end of it. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was surviving someone else's narrative. She was writing her own. At the end of the evening, as the last guests hugged her goodbye and the soft hum of the night settled around her, Isabella stood at the doorway, barefoot, her heart light. She didn't need anyone's permission to be here. She didn't need anyone's approval to be whole. She had chosen herself, and she was enough.